coming up?
If I look at Japan, making a sale is very much like relationship driven. And I think, Australians to some extent hate to be sold to. It's more relationship based or referral based, very, very specific markets. And so you have to adapt. Like if it's an app you've got or if it's a product you're trying to sell, you really have to adapt the product and localize it in that market. But I think it's important to kind of go back to the basics of lean startup, thinking.
Yes.
And, the more validation they do, the more prioritization of the really, really necessary features they do, and just build their first MVP or prototype just for that kind of single use case.
Matt Ainsworth, welcome to the podcast. How are you, mate?
Good, Kieran. Thanks for having me. Good to be on here. And, here you've been doing some pretty good things with the previous episodes. So I was excited to jump on.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually been a pretty whirlwind year, actually. I mean, just with the podcast and also just like other things there in general. But
Right.
I know last episode I had David Kenny on, and I've also had people from Open Coffee like Gunnar, Raghuff, and all them there on. And
Nathan, yep.
Nathan. I've had Nathan on a couple of times there, so it's just good to. So it's actually good to actually just sort of sit down and. Just sit down and just talk to some people there who I meet at like networking events in the startup world, business world, and just having like those interesting conversations and just sort of seeing what's going on and what's happening and all that there. So, so welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I'm really glad to. I'm really interested. I mean, as soon as I met you at one of the open coffees earlier in the year, I think it might have been either February or March's open coffee. One of those. I can't really remember which one, but as soon as I met you there, I mean, I was just like, I was so enthralled by because I was always wanted to work in the markets over in Asia and all that there, and just hearing you just talk a little bit about that, and even the likes in Perth and all that there, it just sort of got me enthralled a little bit there. So so I'm very excited for this conversation. But for those that don't know you there, Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Okay. So I've been away for a while, but I'm originally from Sydney and I've just got back to Sydney. And I've been away for 10 years. So in 2014, I was working in finance and products and in A&P, and left there to go to Japan just for what I thought was a year. Ended up being 8.5. And
wow.
So I was studying the language for a year there, and it was a bit of a career gap break just from finance. But I started doing some contracting there in the communication space, started working with a few financial companies naturally over there. And then, I was just doing a lot of corporate training in communications and kind of Western business culture. And that kind of slowly evolved into getting some access to working with some VCs and startups. And so Japan was really what kind of opened my eyes or opened my mind to the world of startups. And here I am back in Sydney working with startups. So
I mean, like you actually, like, to be honest, taking the jump there back in 2014 over there to Japan, I mean, like you sort of said there, it was only going to be like a year max, and it turned out to be 8.5. I mean, like, were you just sort of thinking, oh yeah, look, I'm going to go there for like a bit of a holiday or just learn a little bit? Like, what made you want to just sort of go and jump on a plane to a Japan? Like, what? Like, it just sort of seems random at times, I mean, like most people there, when they say, oh look, I'm going to jump on a plane, they either want to go to the US or Europe. I mean, I love the Japanese culture, so I mean, I probably would go to Japan, but it just also at some point there just sort of seems random as well.
So I'd been doing a lot of travel around Asia, particularly around kind of 2008 to 2013.
Okay.
So Singapore, Malaysia, Bali, Hong Kong, Korea, you name it, I'd been there. Japan was kind of one of those countries where I always felt like there was something more that I needed to explore. I'm not sure why, but I had studied the language when I was in junior high school, like in year 7, year 8. I was kind of, there's always something about the country. So it was kind of like my opportunity to really get back into the Japanese language study that I kind of hated when I was in high school. And then it was just so I don't have a university degree. I only kind of got financial planning advanced diploma. So I
Oh
thought
wow.
I was limited to a year or 2 years of studying. That's it, because I thought I could. There's no way I could get a work visa. But apparently, like they do have either it's a degree or 10 years experience in a particular sector. And so my experience in finance kind of helped me get over the line. And I had 1 5-year work visa after that, and then a second 5-year work visa. So it was just like it
Wow.
was it was quite easy actually. I was surprised, but yeah, that's kind of what kept me there.
Wow,
Um,
man.
mm,
Wow, man. Like that's actually very like surprising. I mean, because like just the way as to how you sort of talk. I mean like I know that we've had a couple of conversations there before, but you sound a little bit like a professor at times there, the way as how we sometimes talk a little bit. But no, but like I think the way is how you just sort of just sort of there as to how you don't like as how you don't have a degree. I mean, I think because like people nowadays, it's like, oh yeah, look, a degree is sort of like a minimum, is like a minimal base thing. Like it's a bare minimum now. Plus you need experience there.
mm,
I think nowadays, but I think particularly in startups, I think as long as you have sort of like the experience and you potentially know the contacts and the connections, then I think then that they can certainly definitely sort of help you get a get across the line and all that there. But the Japanese startup world, like I'm I've spoken with Nathan a little bit on an episode with that there around the market there over there in Asia.
yep.
But because you've been there for a lot, because you were there for a lot longer, what was one, what was it like, and also two, what are some things there that's different in like I mean sort of now that you're back here in Australia, the contrast between the Japanese startup market to the Australian sort of startup market, the way we do things, or even just other things in general.
Yeah. I mean, so the startup scene wasn't really a thing when I first got there.
Yep.
Uh, there was like probably a few people doing things, but the idea of unicorns and kind of raising capital, 2014, 2015 just wasn't really on people's radars.
Mm,
And if you're aware of the culture, it's very risk averse. People, love this kind of lifetime employment mentality,
yes.
security of full-time work as opposed to taking a risk. Even like there's a huge stigma around failure in business as well.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone loves to save face. Everyone doesn't want to appear to be, doing the wrong thing. But what you saw in COVID, 2019, 2020, I think, like me and many other professionals, like I think we went through this kind of phase of, it was almost like a mid-career crisis
Mm-hmm.
where we kind of had the time at home, working at home, 100%, work from home, to almost think too much about what we were doing in our career and kind of reflect on what's our direction, where we headed, what do we really want from, our working life. And so you started to see some kind of, I don't know if it's armchair founders or like working from home founders, but yeah, the startup scene really started to pick up from
Mm,
2019 and onwards. And now there's a lot of stuff happening in Japan. Not only from like the domestic market, so that's, people born, but they're also attracting quite a bit of international entrepreneurs as well into the market. So yeah, it's a kind of an exciting time to be in Japan if you're there. Now I'm
mm.
not anymore, but I do go back often for events and that kind of thing. Yeah, so 2019 it started to pick up. The other, obviously, I guess the biggest challenge for startup founders is
Yeah.
there's kind of like a domestic market and then there's an international market, and
Okay.
there's no real bridge that connects them. So they very much work in silos. It's very hard to kind of break down that barrier, and I guess that's based on the kind of communication. The international market very English friendly. The domestic one is not
Mm.
very English friendly. So that's kind of a problem that they have. And I know a few people are trying to solve that, bring people together, but I think it's a long-term challenge that kind of needs to be looked at, I guess. So
You said you said something there which I think at the start, where it's like the fear of failure,
Mm.
the career, like the career stability. I can also sort of see that there in like even in just here in Australia and even just globally, like in today's society. I mean, like people at times there just want to just sort of save face and don't want to sort of say, oh yeah, look, the business isn't going so good, or yeah, look, you know what, struggling and all that sort of stuff there, because like you don't really want to, in the eyes of your peers, you don't really want to sort of look, they don't, you don't want them to sort of look down on you,
Yeah.
so to speak. And I think that's something there as to which I think a lot of, I think, entrepreneurs, that there's definitely a struggle there, to which I think there happens, because like I always sort of say this here, Matt, and like I've said this here in a couple of podcast episodes, and I'm probably going to say this here in this act. I'm going to say it in this episode now. But to go into the startup world, it takes a certain type of person.
Yeah.
You have to be of that certain mindset. Like you're going to have grueling hours where you're going to be working, say, 12 hours and get nothing, but then you can work 2 hours and you can get something out of it, or you're going to, it's going to be an influx day. So you have to almost be comfortable in the unknown, but you also have to be
Mm.
comfortable in sort of saying, look, you know what, this could potentially be a failure. I'm not gonna, like, obviously you got to care what other people think, and like, then you have to sort of, like care about, like, potential clients and potential investors and all that there. But when it comes to sort of like peers, or worried about if people are looking down on you or whatnot, you got to
Yeah.
sort of almost push that to the side and just sort of say, I don't really care about that. I'm just going to focus on my business. So
Mm.
that's just something there as to which, like, as soon as you sort of said that there at the start, just sort of got there through to me. And I think COVID, as you sort of said, there was a career life crisis or midlife crisis for people's their careers, like assessing and evaluating. I think that just sort of happened there, like all in all, in general around the world, because like we were just sitting around at home, being in lockdowns and all that, and all that there. And I think that's also when um I think AI just started to pick up a little bit more, because a lot more people were at home and they were able to work on AI in their spare time. So that's like it just goes to show that like even though that COVID been locked down for nearly 2 years, and like there
Mm.
was a bit of a bad thing, but it also just sort of shows there that it was a blessing in disguise for like some people. But yeah, but that's just something there as to which, like, I've just found very, very intriguing and very enthralling about it
Yeah.
there.
I mean, COVID was good in some ways for Japan too.
Yes.
I think it kind of helped people get back in touch with family, especially if they work
Mm,
long hours. Like COVID kind of helped bring their work-life balance back a bit.
yep.
But at the same time, I think it also tore up relationships as well.
Yes.
People potentially should have been at home who were in each other's face.
Mm,
So yeah, it
yes.
was an interesting times. That's all that's how I remember it.
Yes. You
But
actually.
you
Sorry, go
the
on.
point you made around kind of Australians too, like it's funny when you look at Aussie culture and Japan culture, there are a few similarities there. Like, so
Yeah.
if I look at Japan, making a sale is very much like relationship driven. And I think, Australians to some extent hate to be sold to, it's more relationship based or referral based. And that
Yes.
you kind of got to build your credibility or build your relationship, build your rapport before people would even consider you or even trust you.
Exactly.
And Japan, is very, very similar in that regard. Yeah, so and even like risk aversion, like obviously Japan is extreme, but I think
Mm,
even Aussies to some extent, that tall poppy syndrome, like we
yes.
afraid to put ourselves out there. Unlike, if you look at somewhere like the US, where I think they kind of exude a bit more confidence, Aussies tend to hold back.
Mm.
Not always, but like there are some similarities or parallels in the cultures as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, like, just like with the referrals and like with the relationships. I mean, that's just something there as to which, like, even at networking events, my mentor Chris always he said this to me when I went to my first networking event at Open
Mm.
Coffee last year, and it still rings true into my head to this day, because like I almost talk with Chris nearly once a week. I mentioned him a few times on the podcast, but he always said to me, build the relationship first and the business will come later, because
Yep.
because for me, like even just for me in general, it's like I wouldn't want to do business with someone unless I one know what they're like, and not know what they're like, but have a bit of a relationship with them. Whether or not I think that do we get on? Do I think that they're good? In do I think that we can get along? Because like at the end of the day, if a business partnership is going to have to work, you are going to be depending on the type of business. You could be talking to that person maybe once a week, twice a week,
Yeah.
three times a week, or more. You would want to have at least some sort of rapport or some sort of relationship with that person, because you're going to be able to because you're going to have to talk with that person almost however many times a day, weeks, months. So that's kind of where, as to what Chris also just sort of said to me in regards to that there, like build a relationship first,
Yep.
and the business stuff there will come later. And and I think that there is very, like, even just the way that you just sort of were just talking there, that's just the way as to how like I sort of feel even more and more to this day, and whatnot. So it's actually very interesting to sort of see that we are very more similar, more towards Asia, or more towards Japan, or some similarities
Some
than we are.
similarities, yeah.
Yeah, but we were actually having a conversation. I think it was a couple of weeks ago when I actually asked you when I actually asked you to come on the podcast. We were actually talking a bit about prototypes, and we're also talking about a little bit about like what are some of the things there to which to what the Asia market there's like looking at. Like one of the things there to what Chris actually sort of said to me was, if you're going to start a business, look to Asia. Look at what they're doing, and then look at what they're doing, and then
Yeah.
see what they're implementing. And if they haven't done it here in Australia or haven't done it anywhere else, that's where you can get your head started and whatnot. And just like even just now, like with your connections over there, or from what you've seen over there in the Japanese market, like can you give us a bit more insight in regards to that? Because they seem like that they are, because like I've seen like these YouTube shorts and Instagram reels where people sort of saying that like the likes of Japan, Korea, like they're all like living in the year 2050 and all that sort of stuff there, because like some of the stuff that they're doing. So can you give us a bit more insight into that?
Yeah. So Japan's a funny one because like SaaS, if you look at SaaS, the SaaS market took a long time to kind of mature, and it's, if anything, it's still maturing, I believe.
Yep.
Whereas AI, on the other hand, like they've really kind of taken that on board, and you can see like there's really good examples. Like there's a startup called Tier 4. They do like autonomous vehicle driving, essentially, like just the software. And like at Sushi Tech this year, they had a car on display and they were showing off their tech and it raised money. Another good example is like Sakana AI. So Sakana in Japanese means fish. No relation to what the company is trying to do, but hey, that's Japan. And Sakana AI is kind of like an automated AI research assistant. And they're also looking to make AI models a lot more efficient too, in how they design and build. So, and that's kind of, Sakana AI is Japan's fastest growing unicorn as well. I think they did it within 12 months or less, something like that.
Oh,
wow. They raised abroad, they raised in Japan. Yeah, and some really talented people in that team too. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. Like they're doing a lot in AI, but SaaS is still something that's kind of maturing and still a growing market as well. So it's kind of multi-layered. It's a lot of things happening. The only thing I think they struggle with is just really early stage funding. So there's not a lot of angel investors there. Definitely a lot of VCs, a lot of accelerators. You've got people like Techstars and Antler have joined now, so that's good from a very, very early stage funding point of view. But I think they still need a lot more support in that earlier, that it's pre-seed or kind of pre-revenue phase to get them kind of going and from there. So,
well, I mean, like the automated car. I mean, like, that's just something there as to which like I've been hearing over in the US that like people have been wanting that for like ages and whatnot. But now it's like looks like it's potentially starting over there in Japan or over there in Asia. It's just something there as to which like it's something there's which like we always sort of think like it's out of the realms, or it's like
Mm,
5 or 10 years down the track, and then 5 years later you think, oh, it's going to be another 5 or 10 years down the track. But it's slowly and surely getting closer. I mean, especially with the likes of AI, like help speeding things up and and all that there. If you're looking from, say, from an Australian startup point of view, and if someone was to ask you, Matt, what are some things there to which I could learn from the Japanese or from the Asian startup market? If someone was to
mm.
come out and just give you and like ask you for a little bit of guidance, what would you sort of say to them um, in regards to that? And what are some things there that we from Australia can potentially learn from the markets over there in Asia that we could potentially maybe implement here?
Yeah, good question. Deep tech, hardware manufacturing, production, like in Japan, is still pretty, like they have some pretty good capability over there. And here in Australia, I feel like we kind of lost it a bit once we lost all our local car, domestic manufacturing. But now you're starting to see a bit of a push towards building deep tech capability here in Australia again. So I think like if there's anything we can learn, there's definitely like partnerships there or opportunities to partner between Australia and Japan on like building more hardware focused tech or
Yep.
autonomous robots or anything like medical devices, robotics. So robotics is a pretty big one in Japan, as you can imagine. And yeah, they've been doing that for ages, and there's a whole bunch of different startups doing stuff. Australia too, but I guess I would say like Japan, probably 5x that scale. Just because they've got the capability and they've been doing it for years. So
Mm,
especially in the hardware like manufacturing deep tech kind of space, there's definitely a lot we can learn from that. The other one too, I think, is the service industry. Like Japan's service is phenomenal. Like
yes.
I think Australia used to have good service standards. I reckon like this kind of idea of being, friendly, laid back. But I feel like I don't know, like I feel like over time we've kind of lost that a little bit. I don't
Yeah,
know.
me too. Like me too. I mean, I feel like that we have lost it a little bit, but I also think there as well is, mind you, it might be just right now. It might be like because of the cost of living and things
Maybe.
are up a
Yeah,
little bit
maybe.
high that people aren't sort of going out as much and all that there. But yeah, I mean, I do definitely do remember like services back when I was younger and whatnot, that they were a lot more nicer. Like I'm not saying that they're not nice now, but you can definitely sort of see like that difference in quality. I can sort of see there. So yeah, but so like the deep tech and the manufacturing like that there's like, and it just sort of everyone also just sort of says there, oh look, we just got to export out and make things cheaper. I mean, but it just also just goes to show there where it's like if you can manufacture in-house, like it can also potentially be beneficial not only for the business but also just for the Australian economy as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. So, the more we can build our internal capability, the more we don't have to always rely on importing stuff, we can actually start to export potentially,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's it's one of those things there to which like like it really does fascinate me there, like the Japanese startup market, because I'm so fascinated by that there. But um also one of the things there to which I think also with what you also sort of said there, when you're building a business in different markets. So if you're building, say, because I know that you sort of said there that the Japanese market is sort of like in two different sectors, sort of like the international and then sort of like the local. Probably like as you sort of said there, it's potentially got to do with the language barrier. Whereas here in Australia, there's the Western world. We speak predominantly English, so we're able to go to places like Europe and the US and all that there. If you want to build a business in those different markets, so take here in Sydney, and you want to build a business and you want to enter in the Japanese market, or you want to build it into a different market, like even from say Sydney to Perth, because I know that you were talking before, we were talking earlier, earlier in the year, and you did have your travels over there in Perth and all that there. How would you go about that? How would you go about trying to build a business in different markets, particularly one if you are going from say Australia into sort of like the Asia Pacific region, or the European region, or even just like, or just into a totally different or just into a totally different foreign region market? Like, how would you go about that?
Yeah, it's a good question, but I guess it really, really depends on what sector you're trying to build your business in.
Yep.
Like if you go to Japan not really knowing any Japanese, but you're trying to enter, let's say, the education space for like let's say you build an app, teaching English, and there's plenty of those in Japan anyway. But as an example, like you could a lot more easily enter Japan without any Japanese if you wanted to get into the education sector, as
Yep.
opposed to like wanting to work in the energy sector.
Okay.
Like, so the energy sector, is predominantly a lot more domestic, and a lot of the people that work in those sectors or those industries, are also, very domestic focused. There's a lot of domestic companies doing, energy production, nuclear, just nuclear fusion and all that, like nuclear power plants and all the rest of it. So I think it really, you've got to be careful about what you choose. If you go to
Yep.
somewhere like Singapore, obviously English is fine. Once you start going to other countries where English is a bit of a challenge, you've got to figure out, if I am only speaking English and I can't speak the native language,
Mm.
like how far is that going to get me? Like if you think about Perth, everyone thinks Perth is kind of like the mining or the resources capital of Australia.
Yep.
And so naturally, there's a lot of mining tech and energy tech and companies focused on those things. But surprisingly, Perth is really big in biotech as well. Like there's a lot of health precincts out there. They're doing some pretty interesting stuff in the medtech space.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so don't underestimate Perth when it comes to, we just think it's one big mine. Like they're actually doing a whole bunch of different stuff over there, outside of the energy and resources space. So yeah, I think you've just got to kind of figure out what are the resources or what are the sectors where there are opportunity, kind of align your business to that. And then it'll be a lot easier for you to expand into those markets as opposed to not. So
Could you say partnerships work as well? Like if you're wanting to try and get into say let's say market, as you sort of said there, say Singapore or Japan and whatnot, where you don't sort of know the language, say over there in Japan, could
yep.
you maybe try and partner with a business that's similar over there and try and say, hey, look, you know what, we have the tech here, you're maybe a startup or something like that, then maybe we could partner, or something like that. There could maybe partnerships sort of work in different in different ways, or is it more like they're potentially going to be competitors for us in the future?
No, you can definitely find partners over there. I guess the only caveat to that is in a country like, if you're looking at countries like Taiwan, if you're looking at countries like Japan, if you're looking at countries like Korea, they're
Mm.
very, very specific markets. And so you have to adapt. Like if it's an app you've got or if it's a product you're trying to sell, you really have to adapt the product and localize it in that market
Okay.
before you can consider selling it. Because I guess, and even the domestic partner based over there would probably give you the same feedback. And
Okay.
hopefully they'd help you to kind of localize that experience first. And then from there, so you're just taking, like if you look at what is it, Aesop, it's like health brand here in Australia. It actually does quite well in Japan because it's kind of considered this kind of premium product. Guzman and Gomez have got a few stores in Tokyo, like, and actually does quite well too. People have a fairly good like image of that, even though it's like. And I remember someone asked me like, Guzman and Gomez isn't from Mexico. I didn't realize. I said, yeah, it's from Australia.
Oh
They're like,
wow.
oh,
Yeah.
so
I honestly I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah. So
Wow. You learn
Yeah,
something
so
new every day.
localizing the product, localizing for the domestic market, wherever you're heading,
Hmm.
I think is the best thing you can do. So do your research, of course, find your potential partners, but more likely than not, you'll have to localize it for that domestic market as well.
I think the way as to how you just sort of put it there, it sort of reminds me of like all those. I think it's like those Fanta products that I think that you see there as to how I think I remember seeing a video over in Asia. I think it might have been either Japan or Korea where they have like lots of different flavors of Fanta.
Yep.
But like here in Australia, I think we only have like two or three of those sort of flavors. I mean, like mind you, I only have the original, so I can't really sort of say much for myself. But
Right.
it just sort of just goes to show there that like how like localizing and making it different and being accustomed to that to like that people to like that region's culture and all that there just sort of that's something there which just sort of came there into my that just sort of just came into my head. You touched base. I mean, you touched base on how the startup world as to how like they're needing potential investors and how like that there's sort of the hard part. That there to me also I think a lot of early stage founders here in Australia also find very, very difficult, like even now, like especially now after COVID, and I think now with the cost of living, I think that's something there to which for me personally, like I think that's a reason as to where like, a lot of potential angel investors not saying that they will invest, but
Mm,
I mean, not saying that they won't invest, but they're a lot more like like you've got to have all your ducks in a row. Like you have to make sure that everything's well prepared and all like that, and you have to sort of basically try and sell it to them a lot more than I think what it probably wouldn't have been if we weren't sort of in like this cost of living crisis. I mean, like I'm not saying
yep.
there that like I'm not saying there that if you were to go up to say like a founder or to an angel investor and ask them for money and like they'll give it to you willy-nilly, like they wouldn't do that. No. But I'm just sort of saying like if you were to pitch an idea to them, some founders potentially would say, you know what, I kind of like this product. I might go on a whim. Whereas now to me, I just sort of seems like I like this product. I kind of do want to go on a whim on it, but but you probably need to convince me a tiny little bit more. That's just sort of what I sort of gathered from that there. The should the Australian market or the Australian startups be looking to go to Asia, like be looking to try and invest in Asian startups, or should we try and focus on and try and invest in the Asian startups and try and bring them over here to Australia, or vice versa, or should we be trying to sort of copy what they're doing and then and bring it over here to Australia to try and get ahead of the curve?
Yeah. It's a good question. Like I always see Australia as definitely, a base for a lot of great innovation. And I think we
Yes.
have some pretty good investors here for,
Yep.
on a per capita basis. I think
Yep.
it's a lot more active here than it is, say, compared to in terms of proportion, like compared to somewhere like Japan.
Yep.
But yeah, in Australia, like I think we should be doing more to build relationships with countries like Indonesia, having a mass surge in population, like China, obviously, India,
Mm.
who is very like entrepreneurial country. Even Japan, of course. So yeah, I think we could be doing more. But I don't know that I'd be looking to bring startups here. I think we should be helping startups go over there from
Go over
Australia.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I know there's some like government initiatives and funding that help you to export your product or service abroad, but I feel like it's more education and more partnerships need to be formed as
Mm.
well, just to help people understand what is the opportunity. Because if you talk to an Australian startup, they'll say UK, probably Europe, US. Like they're the main three that they think about. They never.
Yes.
It's rare for them to think about Asia, which is just on our doorstep, mind you.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. That's something there as to which like I just like like every time when you talk to a founder, or like when you talk with certain people, or like you hear all the time, it's like the US, the UK, it's like all, or like even at some stages there, India and all there. Like you rarely hear Asia, or you rarely hear
Yeah.
Japan, you rarely hear all these other, where they're just like
Really
a
here,
hop.
China, like
Yeah,
China's a massive market.
yeah, where they're like a hop,
Mm,
skip, and a jump away from here to Australia, but they're not. But if you got to go to the UK, it's a lot longer of a hop, skip, and a jump. It's
yeah.
it's it's a lot longer there. So like that's something there which I find very, very fascinating. The fact that we're not capitalizing on it.
Mm. And we could be doing way more, but I guess some people want kind of the government to focus on our own domestic issues as well.
Mhm.
So I don't know. There's a lot of competing priorities out there. So
Yeah.
it's a hard argument. But in saying that, yeah, maybe not a government focus, but even people on the ground who have relationships abroad, I'd like to see more people try to do stuff, build partnerships or build pathways to help startups explore expansion into different countries.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I mean, you also now that, like, to be honest, I absolutely agree with that, because I think that, when you build relationships, one of the things there, I think what we sort of said there earlier, like business is built on relationships. And I think that's something there to which, if you have sort of like contacts overseas, like try and use them. I mean, I'm someone there who doesn't like at times to ask at times. I'm someone there who at times it doesn't really like asking, but but if you see something there that can be beneficial potentially at times
Mm,
for some people, or for like, so, for example, if I see it, so I see something beneficial for, say, like a friend in their business that's overseas, I might ask them, say, hey, look, what do you think? So I'm someone that doesn't really like to ask, but whether or not that's my pride, or whether or not that's just, because like I just don't, because I just think it sort of seems a little bit too salesy or something. But that's something there to which I think, you have to build the relationships first, and, utilize your contacts. And that's something there to which I think, you know, what we just got to try and just keep doing, and whatnot. Before, because like we've been like at this here for about 30, well, wow, like time's actually nearly flown by. We've been at this for like nearly 40 for nearly 40 minutes and whatnot.
yep,
Like, yeah, you also work at Tekkon as
yep,
well.
yep.
Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about Tekkon and all that there, because I'm very intrigued and I'm interested in regards to that area as well.
Yeah, cool. So Tekkon is born in Perth company,
Hmm.
Fremantle, if you know Perth that well,
Yes.
and basically a spin out of a startup, a fintech that so the CTO, now managing director, hired a guy from Nepal who
Oh,
was
wow.
I think he just finished his masters in Perth and joined them. The CTO told him to go abroad to Nepal and hire three more of him, effectively three more software engineers. And then they had this kind of model of so a local person on the ground, but also three people working remotely in Nepal.
Oh,
And
wow.
as other startups in Perth heard about that model, they wanted a piece of the action. And so that kind of just naturally grew word of mouth mainly, and spread across Perth. So Tekkon, very kind of local Perth company. We do have customers here in Sydney, and obviously now I'm here back in Sydney. I'm helping to build some brand awareness. But effectively, what we do is called staff augmentation, which means you are a startup founder or you have a team of developers here in Sydney, and we help you to scale that out with remote resources over in Nepal. So you need an extra dev, we plug one in. You need an extra 5 developers, we give you those 5 developers for as long as you need, effectively. So yeah, that's
Cool.
kind of like our model. We do everything from full stack to AI/ML to UI UX to kind of cloud infrastructure, project management. Yeah, and mobile app development, data science, all of that. And yeah, it's worked pretty well. We've been growing consistently and got about 65 developers now
Oh,
in
wow.
Nepal. So started from 3 or 1 here in Perth, if you want to call it that. Yeah, about 65 now, and yeah, growing the yeah, Perth and Sydney were probably is the biggest markets for us, and
Yeah.
I think there's yeah, look opportunity. We've got one client in Japan, one in Sweden, um, and was there one? Anyway, I think we've got three global clients as well. Yeah, so
Wow.
it's going well. It's going well. I'd say.
Just just hearing that, it's really like, to be honest, I find that very, very fascinating because like it's almost like I don't want to sort of use I don't want to use like a term, but it's almost like you're almost like a rented developer sort of, so to
Kind
speak,
of, yeah.
kind of business. I mean, like like a rented developer, and I think especially in the tech startup today, or for people there who don't know tech but are looking for developers and all that there, I think it's something there to which is very is something there to which I think at times that like I think that there's a bit of a could you say that there could be a bit of a stigma of wanting to sort of say, oh, look, you know what, I'm getting my tech outsourced overseas, like I sort of get sort of that feeling there where like people sort of, if they say, oh, look, I'm getting my tech outsourced overseas,
Yeah.
like people at times potentially might gotta sort of look at them a little bit differently or something like that. Like that's just something that what I've noticed. Um, I'm not sure if you've noticed that, personally.
Yeah, I think, there's startups out there that only want 100% local onshore in the same office. That's
Yeah,
totally fine. Like that's their model. That's what they're comfortable with. You should never convince them otherwise. There's people that are kind of curious about offshore, and then there's people that have been burnt before that have had a horrible experience and probably told the world about it. And
yeah,
so that's where you start to see some of the kind of negative reputation of companies. Like you've worked abroad, they still have the code. I paid them for it. They never gave the code back to me, or I got a broken, half working app from wherever overseas. So I think a lot of the stigma comes from people being burnt
yeah.
previously. And I think half the time it's kind of maybe non-technical founders who probably struggled to understand how to work with the developers.
Yep.
Um, Half the time, it's probably someone taking them for a ride because they're in a different country. No, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure there's some loss in
Yeah.
translation as well. But so what we try to do to mitigate that, we try to supervise the staff
Mm-hmm.
abroad in Nepal. We try to hire for the long term as well. So we've got some clients that have been with us for 7 years,
Oh, wow.
with some of the same devs that they started with. So we always try to hire long term, give them the employee experience. So even though, if they wanted to work with a guy for 6 months and then end it, they could. What we try to do is we try to give them a more of a employee experience. So it feels like
Mm.
this is someone they can trust and work with, until like, yeah, they want to expand their team. Let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so like especially there for someone there who's a non-technical founder, like how would you sort of say to someone there, especially like working like if because you sort of said there, I think if they're a non-technical founder trying to work with the developer, what are some things there to what like someone there could actually try and work could try and do with a developer, like to try and find a way to sort of, I don't know, try and work with the developer, or to try and get that I won't say that happy medium, but to try and it's on the tip of my tongue there, that sort of good healthy relationship there between a founder and a developer, especially for someone there who's like non-tech developers, because now we're heading into the age where like tech is everything
Mm,
now, and like I've even sort of said, like I think it's now going to come to the point there um where if you're not a tech, where like if you're not anywhere in like that computer science or full stack development or whatnot, you know, you're you're seriously not going to be able to make it that far in the tech world, as a non-tech entrepreneur, unless you are able to use AI, of course. But I think AI is able to sort of level that out. But I think the relationship between non-tech founders and developer, it's one of those things there, which is like, you've got to try and make them happy, so to speak, and one of those yeah, one of those things there, which what I find very, very intriguing.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, the non-technical founders that have worked in tech before tend to be a lot more, find that happy medium because they've spoken to developers, they know how development sprints work, or they've been in an
Yep.
agile environment before. So they probably can, to some degree, build successful relationships. People that are new coming in, I think the hardest thing is like they have a given budget and a
Yep.
given time frame usually, and that's what they want to stick to. And understandably, they're probably limited cash flow, or like they want to release by a certain date so they can, because they've told someone or they've told
Mm.
some users or whatever it is. That's great from their point of view, but from a developer point of view, like things change and things
Yes.
like there's many unforeseen bugs that can occur. Sometimes the founder will be changing their mind on the fly, like saying, I want to add this feature, I want to add this feature. So suddenly this 4 week or this 8 week build has become 12 weeks or 16 weeks, but the founder's budget is still the same, but the time frame is still the same, and so there's a massive disconnect right there.
As soon as
Um,
as soon as you sort of said that there, Matt, like I just started shaking my head, then nodding my head yes, because like that reminds me of one of my recent start that I was working with, and we had a bug for a day on one of the apps, and we were talking, I was messaging like the developer
yeah.
and all that there, and it like to be like and like part of me, mind you, I was very green at the time, and like I just sort of was like going, "Oh, when's the bug going to be fixed?" And then when I then was like going, and then when I then sort of was like thinking, I was like going, I think I was, and then when I was then told, "Oh, they have to go in, they have to change the code, they have to then do like all this XYZ, like test to see if it's still stable or if there's no other bugs that come through," and then that's when I slowly started to learn a little bit of a respect for the developer, and that's what I
Mm.
like I have a full-blown respect now for like the developers, because like sitting down looking at the code, trying to find if the code is correct, trying to then test it and all that there, like as soon as you sort of said that there, like that they want this here by a deadline, or as soon as they want that there, it just sort of brought back memories. And like that's something there to which I think a lot of founders, especially new founders, if they're going into the tech, has just got to be aware of, is that like, bugs happen, these things happen, like things potentially could break down, and you could, it could set you back a couple of weeks, couple of days, or even a couple of months.
Yeah, but I think it's important to kind of go back to the basics of lean startup, thinking.
Yes.
And, the more validation they do, the more prioritization of the really, really necessary features they do, and just build their first MVP or prototype just for that kind of single use case.
Mm-hmm.
And then, try to monetize that or try to get some paid pilots or whatever it is, or even pre-sell the solution so you got some money to then go and build it. Like, I think more, I think we still need to be kind of teaching founders that, don't go and build a fully fledged product from day one. Like, keep it simple, keep it lean, do as much as you can on AI first so that you can get somewhere. And then, you're just finding people then to fill in the gaps to get you to that, first working version. So I think it's education. The other thing too, when you're building new stuff, like
Yes.
things that haven't been built before, it's very, very hard to estimate how long that's going to take to build new tech. So that doesn't always happen. It's probably, let's say 1 out of 5. But when you're building something new that doesn't exist in the market, then how long is that going to take to develop? That is that is hard to estimate, right, in some cases too. So.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, like that there's definitely true. I mean, like how you just sort of said there with the automated cars earlier in the conversation. I mean, like
Yeah.
that's something there which never been done before, and I think it's something there as to which I think to use a sports analogy, because like I'm a massive cricket fan.
Yeah.
Getting the first wicket is the hardest one, but once you get but once you get your first wicket,
Yeah.
the second one will come quicker. The third one, like the more wickets will tumble. Or if you score your first 100, the rest will come easier.
Come
So I
after
think
that. Yeah.
that's something there which I think is very, very I think very, very like that you could sort of use in this here with sports and all that there.
Yeah.
So but if a founder, so say if someone came up to you and they are a non-tech founder and they want to reach into tech and they said to you, Matt, I'm thinking of going into I'm thinking of using say Tekkon, or I'm thinking of going off and getting a developer, or going in and starting up a new tech company. What are just some things there to what a non-technical founder needs to look out for, or needs to be wary of, or just needs to prepare themselves for when they are starting to create a tech or a new tech, or going into the tech market?
Yeah. Good question. I guess, I mean, there's multiple ways to like skin a cat, right? So
Yes.
it comes down to a few questions I always ask, like, do you have a tech co-founder? Are you searching for one? Do you want to talk to somebody that I know, like a fractional CTO that can at least give you some advice?
Yep.
That's usually kind of step one, especially when they're not from the tech world. Perhaps they don't understand as much and they want to take that next leap. People who probably played with AI are probably a little bit more advanced in that journey. And so they're a bit more tech literate, and sometimes they will work with us to, we'll get them a UI UX designer to help them build the wireframe or that clickable prototype essentially in Figma. Or like sometimes they might build on no code and we can find them a developer to help with that, because that, say, development life cycle is probably a lot shorter, because it's a lot of it is drag and drop. And so it really depends on the journey they want to go. You always need to check. Ideally, they have a tech co-founder first,
Yep.
because then probably they've got an MVP they've built, they've got a few users, they know exactly what they want, and then they just need another dev to help them scale and build that out a bit more cost effectively. But when they don't, you help them, but you want to help them on the ground too, because they still, from my point of view anyway, should be finding someone that they can work with, like a tech co-founder, I think, on the ground in Australia, or in a market where they're selling their products.
Yep.
To help them get to point A. And
so would you say that the most important thing there, that if you are a non-tech founder going into the tech market, is first things first, try and find a developer, or another tech co-founder, but someone there who can meet the same, like someone there who you can get on with and all that sort of stuff there, because one, you're going to have to be working with that relationship and all that there. But would you say that the number one thing there is to try and find a tech co-founder first?
I mean, the answer is always it depends.
Yeah.
Like, if they really want to raise money, they need a tech co-founder. Like, otherwise, otherwise they won't be able to make decisions on their own tech products. Like, they won't have internal capability to help them build or make decisions about the tech stack. Blah 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 blah. So
Yeah.
like, depending on what they want to do, a tech founder makes more sense, especially if they want to go around that route of raising capital or building partnerships, owning their own IP, i.e., owning their own code or having code in their name, like the tech in their name, the app in their name, is kind of essential if they want to go down that route. Okay. So that's why they should really try to do that. Of course, non-tech founders can skill themselves up to certain level, or learn to code, or there's many free coding workshops out there that they can try. And hey, if you want to do that, I reckon go for it. I'd love to see what you can come up with at the end of that. But yeah, it always comes down to like, what is their ultimate outcome, or where are they headed in terms of their journey. If they're just trying to test, maybe Bubble or a no code or a AI like app, just to get them to stage one is good enough. and
Mm.
then they can find the tech co-founder. Like, so
Yeah.
it's really depending on what they want to do and what their limitations are, and yeah, how
Or
that
kind of
kind of thing.
or kind of like you sort of said there, there's a million ways to skin a cat or a thousand ways to skin
Correct.
a cat. So yeah,
Correct.
I mean like that there, I think like you sort of said there, like like using the AI. I think I remember talking with Nathan, and he actually sort of said there that um that using AI has sort of for the early stage to founders is probably a lot better because one, they're going to be on a budget. And if you're going to be having a retainer of a full stack developer or something like that, there it's going to draw a lot into your budget. So like I think that if you can use sort of like your AI, I think if you can use sort of the AI tools as well, that they can potentially help. But again, as you sort of said there, use that there as step one, and then go to step two, which will be to try and get yourself a developer to try and improve that and go forward with that. That's the ways how I'm sort of looking at it and sort of start and the ways how I think that people probably should be looking at it from that point of view there as well is like obviously you can use AI as much as you want, but at some point there, you're going to have to take that jump from AI to person.
Yeah. So never hire a developer if you can't afford it. It would be
Yes.
my warning number one.
Yes, that would be yes, yes.
um,
That's yes.
be as resourceful as you can. But one thing I saw recently in a talk, Lee Goldsworthy did. He's CTO out in Perth. Shout out to
Yep.
Lee. He did a talk about finding a tech co-founder, especially for non-tech founders. And he
Mm-hmm.
said the first pitch you do should be to your tech co-founder, not an investor. And I thought it was gold. So yeah, like the more work you've done on the business, the more you've tried to use AI, the more you've got it to a point where now you can't go any further. Like that shows that your kind of conviction in your idea, you want to make this work, you've been able to execute on the stuff that you can do. And that kind of shows that you've tried your best to a potential partner. And so I think someone with just an idea that says, hey, you want to be my tech founder, co-founder versus someone who's actually spent 6 to 12 months and spent some of their own money on building something and then ask for help is probably in a much better position. So
Yeah, I think the ways how you sort of said that there, and I think that if you, I think the ways how you sort of said that there, or the way how Lee sort of said there, I think the the way how I would look at it is if you can't convince someone to be a developer for your company, then how are you going to be able to convince an investor to invest
there
in
you
the
go.
company?
There you go.
That's so I think like that there's some very good insight there. So I mean uh shout outs to Lee and all that there. I mean, like, if it was, I mean, look, if it was probably me, I probably would have I would have just sort of said, yeah, it was me. But you did the smart thing there, Matt.
No, I don't
But,
copyright. So
but yeah, but like that there, the way is how he just sort of said it there, just sort of like, as soon as I thought of that there, I just sort of thought, yeah, like if I can't convince a developer to come on and do this project, how am I going to convince an investor?
there you go.
So,
So,
yeah, but well, Matt, we can potentially be talking about this here for bloody
yeah, I
ages and
know.
what,
It's a rabbit
like,
hole.
to be honest, like because like this entire conversation it's been enthralling, it's been gripping because I absolutely love the Asia startup market. I love this here. So yeah, but just quickly before we move on to the last section there, I mean, we were also just before we move on to that there because we were talking a couple of weeks ago. There was this, and I wanted to bring this up. And I wanted to save this bit here for the last bit because we are talking about, I think, a product in Japan, about a prototype over there in Asia. We were talking about it for a little while. Can that prototype there? Can you sort of give us can you sort of explain that there? What we were talking about before, not earlier in the conversation, but a few weeks ago. I think it was about making food taste.
Oh, right.
That one. That was the one. I wanted to bring it up earlier in the conversation, but I thought, no, look, you know what? I'll save it to the end because this here, it can be a little bit there, then we can then move into the end. And I just thought, like this bit here, like that prototype there. I'm just sitting there and I'm looking, I'm like going, like that conversation, like honestly, I've been thinking about that type of product since our conversation. I've like that's been on my mind at least a few times a week,
Okay.
honestly.
Okay.
So can you
So
so yeah.
there's a bit more history behind it. So I was talking to a guy who was
Mhm.
looking to 3D print sushi.
Yes.
And I was kind of training him on how to do a better pitch for um his idea. And
Yes.
he was working under one of the bigger marketing companies called Dentsu in Japan, and he was like an offshoot of them, and he was working on this product. And I think that was I want to say 2019, 2020, something like that. And so fast forward 5 years, 2025, this year, I went to Sushi Tech, which is like this big startup innovation showcase in Tokyo,
Yep.
and in May. And there's a corner of 3D printers, and it's all food. And some were printing like block dessert, some were like 8-bit or 16-bit, if you will,
Mhm.
um, yeah, basically sushi, like shrimp on top of rice or salmon on top of rice, and using the right colors, but very pixelated or very blocky, if you can imagine.
Mm.
But yeah, so apparently, like they have worked on developing like an infusion of different materials to replicate the tastes of what a prawn would taste like or what salmon would taste like. Same with the desserts, like so. It's still early days. It's still new tech, and there's nothing like we couldn't try anything. That was my most disappointing part. I really wanted to try it to see how
Me too.
yeah, similar it tasted. But yeah, they had some kind of mock-up, plastic kind of models there of what they can do. And obviously that's a big work in progress, but exciting times nevertheless, I think.
Like I just think that like and the reason why I brought this up here last was just because like if I brought this up at the start, we
Yeah.
could talk about this here for the entire conversation. So that's why I thought, okay, well, I'll bring it up at the end.
Yeah.
So that way there I can then pigeonhole myself to only talk about it for a couple of minutes. Because like to me, I think that one, that is innovative, but also two, not only that can sort of like I think that can solve so many problems in so many different sort of avenues. I think we were talking about it earlier, a couple of weeks ago when we were having when we had our meetup,
Mm,
about if you're a vegan, or if you want to try and be a vegetarian or go vegan, you
yeah.
know, you can potentially now have a steak that actually
Yeah.
tastes like a steak, but
Right.
is not, but it's not like of using any meat products, or if you're like say well, the only thing there which I think I'm very unsure about is potentially maybe the likes of allergy. So like if you have a peanut allergy, would that still transfer over? But that's where the testing there would still have to go in with that.
Sure.
But if it doesn't, then people there with allergies could be able to taste what the what that food actually tastes like. If it
Mm,
if it if it goes that way, like I can just sort of see that, like, to be honest, that there was, since our conversation there last, that's been on my mind for since then. But I find that honestly, like we were talking about automated cars earlier, but to me that was the most, I believe that this year is the most revolutionary type of piece I've
yeah.
actually heard of innovative or of innovation I've heard in a long, long time. Potentially, maybe even since, or well, maybe even potentially since the AI era. Like since AI has been introduced, after like this has probably been the most innovative way that I've actually sort of heard of a business idea in a
Right.
long, long time.
Well, yeah, and then you can tell how popular it was because there was always crowds of people around it. Like not only, foreign visitors, like international visitors, but also like people from Japan were just like
Mm.
so taken back by what is this technology? So yeah, it was one of the showstoppers definitely at Sushi Tech.
Yeah, like of course, because in all honesty, like how like like I'm just gobsmacked at it because like it's something that which like we hadn't have like I hadn't have thought of until you said it. But then when I'm then
Mm,
thinking about it, I'm like going, But why haven't we tried that yet? Like, why haven't we tried 3D printing food and all that
Yeah.
sort of stuff there? So, yeah, like it's just something there to which I think is revolutionary, and it just also goes to show, like, that we should be looking more towards Japan or looking towards Asia and looking at those markets, and then trying to see what we can come over here,
Mm.
here in Australia. It's just like it's very, very fascinating that there, and that's kind of why I just wanted to bring that up there,
Yeah, yeah.
towards the back end, because I knew, because I knew myself that if I brought it up in the at the start of the conversation there, Matt, I just knew that like we'll be having this entire hour long conversation, just on that. Like, so that's why
Yeah.
I thought, look, I'll make it at least towards the back end. And whatnot, and then I'll pigeonhole myself to at least 5 to 8 minutes of it. So, so now we're wrapping. So now that we're wrapping up, there, we're towards the end. This is the part here where I just sort of allow my previous guest to ask my current guest a question, and to ask a question. I'm also allowing you to ask my next guest a question there as well. And the question that I sent you the question there, but I'm going to actually say it. It was from David Kenny, and David's question was, I want. He basically sort of said, I want you to think about the three most painful incidents in your life. Don't tell me what they are. Um, but but did those three things, but what did those three things have in common? And what did you learn about yourself upon reflecting these problems, or incidents?
Yep. Um, I mean, I think one thing I tend to do too much of is linger on the negativity and
Mm-hmm.
not push myself out of, how can I overcome this or solve this problem?
I'm the
Get
same.
get out on the other side.
Yes.
So
I think a lot of us can relate to that.
yeah, so what I've always been trying to do is push myself out of the lingering and into the action, or into the, like, reframing it to, okay, what have I learned? What should I now do next time, and what can I um do better if I ever face that challenge again. So I think it's really trying to reframe, I think, is the first thing. Like, life is full of ups and downs. We will always have, our great weeks or our great days, and our, shit days, excuse my language,
Yeah.
and, our not so good days. When something bad happens, yes, you're going to feel negative about it, but for how long?
Mm.
And when is it okay to take that next step to say, okay, yes, this has happened. Now I'm going to deal with it. What can I do to make it what can I do to solve that or overcome it? And what can I do now or next time, if that ever comes back, to make sure that I don't get in that situation again, or to help me deal with it the next time it
Mm.
arises. So yeah, lingering on negativity is being something I'm think I'm still trying to work on. It's definitely still trying to work on.
Yeah.
And if anything, it's about reframing and trying to get back on the right path again.
Yeah.
Once you hit an obstacle or challenge. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
very high level, but that's
Yeah. I think we all at some point there, or I know myself, like I'm someone there who always lingers and always sort of thinks, looks back over his mistakes a lot, and always sort of thinks, oh, like, oh shit, he should have done this, I should have done that, or and all that there. But I think the way is how you just sort of said it there, which was, okay, look, even though that you should have done this here, linger on it, but then the next time that there happens again. So, like, for example, if it's for example, say if it's like if you're learning to, say, like, ride a bike, or if you're learning to ride or like trying to do something new, and you fell off and all that there, instead of lingering on it saying, oh, should have done this, should have done that, well, next time, now that you know what you got to do, just do this, if you're in that situation. I think that that's something that which a lot of people try to, like, to be honest, that is a very tough skill, I think, for a lot of people there, to try and just put everything what they've done, or what's lingering in their head behind them, and to just
yeah,
sort of use that as an experience to say, this is what I got to look at going forward. I think that's something there to which I think even what we're all trying to do, and like I just find that that's very relatable in my case as well.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, trying to get that negative voice out of your head is
Yes.
step one, I think.
Yeah, well, there's definitely I think the most definite sort of thing there to what I think a lot of people do, and I think that's something there what you got to have to try and do if you want to, go places, especially as like an entrepreneur or even as places there, like you got to have to sort of, let the negative thoughts get out of your head there. So, but now that we're now sort of reaching now towards the end there, because you answered my previous guest question, I'm now allowing you the chance to ask my next guest a question, which my next guest, we already now know, we for those that don't know, off air, we actually both know the guest, who the next guest is, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to wait for the next episode, so you have to tune in for that. But Matt, what is your next question for my next guest?
Maybe my question gives a bit of a hint, but the next question is, along your startup journey, what's one of the awesome things about being an entrepreneur or a founder, but what's one of the most toughest things that you have to deal with?
Oh, that is actually, to be honest, that there is actually, I think, that there's a very good question. I mean, to be honest, I actually might, because normally what I normally do is I normally ask those types of questions, like ask questions at the end. I might actually just say, you know what, we're going to jump to the last segment and put that question at the start or somewhere there.
Okay.
But like, because it's a very good question, because a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of them actually sort of say like, oh, look, you know what, there's good and there's bad things that come with them on their journey, or there's a lot of all these sorts of things there. And I know that I said earlier in the conversation, it takes a certain type of entrepreneur, but a type of person to work in startups. But like, it's just when you work in them, there's a lot of highs and then there's a lot of lows. And I just think that everyone has a different story. And yeah, I'm very excited to sort of hear what my next guest has to say about that. So, thanks again. So thanks again for that, for asking that question there, Matt. But
no problem.
But to be honest, Matt, this year now concludes this year then concludes the episode and the recording there, Matt. So Matt, thanks again for agreeing to come on. And yeah, it was. I got to get you back on. I got to get you back on this episode there. On another recording, whether it's towards the back end of 2025 or the back end or the start of 2026. Gonna have to get you back on. But for that concludes this episode, and I'll see you all next time. So thanks again there, folks.